Okay, we might get started. So it's my pleasure today to introduce Dr. Leigh. So Leigh is the Principal Veterinary Officer within the Epidemiology and One Health section of the Animal Health Policy branch of the Australian Government Department of Agriculture, and also the Australian OIE National Focal Point for Veterinary Products. So Leigh manages and conducts activities to enhance the national approach on antimicrobial resistance, veterinary public health and other One Health initiatives. And she's here today to talk us or give us an international and national AMR sort of perspective in the animal health fields.
And good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to Justine and the organisers for letting me have this opportunity to bring up about the animal health sector's actions towards combating AMR. So today I just wanted to walk you through some international and national initiatives that are being progressed on the AMR landscape and how these are influencing or will influence the Australian animal health sector's thinking and activities. And everything is starting to become more One Health approach, so I may touch on some human health aspects. So with the international landscape, there are many human and animal health influences that you may not be aware of, and the focus is now firmly on building stronger action against AMR through standards development and capacity building, particularly in less well-developed countries. So this year, the WHO published a working paper with an action-orientated focus, and it's targeted to low to middle income countries, but the concepts such as prioritising AMR activities, engaging stakeholders, tailoring messages could equally be applied to any country. What stood out for me, and is something that the Australian animal health sector does inherently well, is the suggestion that countries should leverage existing animal health work that overlaps with priority AMR activities, and by doing increasing the level of effort or by broadening the scope of that AMR relevant work, and thereby create a deeper impact with AMR. So what the Australian animal health sector could continue doing is identifying and adapting the AMR relevant activities and embedding them in relevant plans to deliver greater impact with AMR results. Australia already has good animal husbandry and biosecurity practices, use vaccination where we can, we have strong regulation with veterinary medicines and solid disease investigation programs, just to name a few. Australia also, the animal health stakeholders are also very engaged with AMR. With the OIE, they're moving their contribution with AMR on the global landscape by establishing a permanent OIE working group. That happened this year, and that working group is going to be reporting to the OIE Director General. So the OIE is the World Organisation for Animal Health. And some responsibilities that this working group will be doing is identifying risks and risk management options to support the OIE international standards, developing additional guidance for interpretation and implementation of standards, and implementing other aspects such as the OIE Antimicrobial Usage data collection and its connection to the World Animal Health Information System and the tripartite integrated surveillance system on AMR. They're also looking at refinement of the OIE list of antimicrobial agents of veterinary importance, development and implementation of capacity development activities, behavioural change, establishing an information system on falsified and substandard drugs, and many other activities. And it is a large job for a small group of people. And we do have a representative from Australia on that group. Other major influencing activities that are either coming to an expected end or are commencing this year too. I have been involved as part of the Australian delegation to the Codex ad hoc Intergovernmental Task Force on AMR alongside Food Standards Australia and New Zealand colleagues. And the last couple of years, we've been involved in and refining the code of practice for containing and minimising AMR, and the development of guidelines on integrated monitoring and surveillance for foodborne AMR. For the code of practice, there has been a reviewing and refining of it, and there's been a resolution about what's being considered medically important antimicrobials. That is to say, it's the WHO's list of categories being critically important, highly important, and important. And also, that, as well as that, also the equivalent of criteria established by national antibacterial lists. Australia has been instrumental in obtaining that recognition of equivalency for national antibacterial lists, as well as supporting a risk-based approach. However, there's still some resolution required, and that's around the principles associated with antimicrobial growth hormones, due to the strong divergent opinions about whether it should be restriction of all antimicrobials, including ionophores, or whether it should be that colstin, fluoroquinolones, and third and fourth generation cephalosporins are restricted, and all other antimicrobials are restricted in the absence of risk analysis, which would be in alignment with the OIE's list recommendations. So on this front, Australia does not have antimicrobials important for human health with growth promotion claims. And we have not registered colistin, carbapenems, and fourth generation cephalosporins for animal use. And also fluoroquinolones are not approved for use in food producing animals, including horses. So where is animal health headed with AMR surveillance internationally? Ideally, we want integration of human health and animal health data so that trends in resistance could be equated to what we've got in usage patterns. But currently there is no coordinated system for surveillance and monitoring data at the global level. From last year's Interagency Coordination Group on AMR's discussion paper, it was first highlighted that the WHO, the OIE and FAO were working on a new initiative known as the Tripartite Integrated Surveillance System on AMR and AMU, or the TISA, and it's to promote the harmonisation of data from human, animal, food, agriculture and environment sectors. This system is in the early stages of development, and the platform will identify trends in AMR and AMU and also measure the impacts of interventions such as regulation over time at the regional and global levels. In other words, it will link FAO, OIE, WHO and United Nations Environment Programme data. So this is a signal that animal health AMR surveillance data will be sought at the global level. Similar to the OIE's initiative with antimicrobial usage data collection, the FAO is to take charge of the AMR surveillance with animal health and agriculture. The intent has been flagged in a recent tripartite monitoring and evaluation framework document, and FAO is developing this data platform at the moment for AMR related to food and agriculture. FAO however, has also been involved in various other activities, such as the development of its FAO assessment tool for laboratories and antimicrobial resistance surveillance systems, developing surveillance guidelines for terrestrial and aquatic animals, and recommendations for prudent and responsible use of veterinary medicines in aquaculture. There is particular need in the Asian region for these guidelines in aquaculture, given this is the largest agricultural industry and there is little management of AMU in aquaculture in some countries of this region. And this was recognised at a recent conference of the OIE Regional Commission of the Far East, Asia, Far East and Oceania, where countries do not have systematic surveillance and are struggling with the lack of technical capability and standardisation and harmonisation of test procedures. The OIE data collection on antimicrobial usage in animals is an annual process since 2015. The data is typically supplied in December by member countries. And there has been difficulty in collecting Australia's animal usage data, and the department continues to explore options with key stakeholders to improve the approach. With the release of the OE's third annual report into antimicrobial agents used in animals, the Asia, Far East and Oceania region continues to report high use of antimicrobial growth promoters, with macrolides, orthomycins, polypeptides and tetracyclines being prominently used, and a lack of regulatory frameworks to support the reduction in use. Our region also reports the most antimicrobial agents intended for use in animals compared to other OAE regions. Antimicrobials primarily used in animals of our region include tetracyclines, penicillins, polypeptides and macrolides. However, the OAE AMU information is not broken down by sub-region or the level of development of a country. As mentioned, the OAE Regional Conference also highlighted that many countries are equally struggling with the implementation of a national AMU monitoring system. Very few countries have achieved farm-level data, and most of their data comes from sales and import data. Also, the regulatory frameworks in animal health are weaker than that in human health. So the fourth OAE AMU report is currently being drafted, and it's due out in the first quarter of 2020. The department, in conjunction with the Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority, are currently preparing Australia's response to the questionnaire for the fifth round. So how do we know that progress is being made by countries towards the Global Action Plan on AMR, and whether we have succeeded in our actions? The tripartite has been working on a tangible way to monitor and the change in national and global progress through the tripartite monitoring and evaluation framework. And this framework was released in the first half of this year, and it should make it easier to track and identify gaps through various primary AMR data collections, such as the tripartite annual country self-assessment questionnaire. The framework includes recommended core indicators that have been agreed across the tripartite and the United Nations Environment Programme to collect and monitor data at a national, regional and global level over the next 5 to 10 years. The core indicators define what to measure, when and how. And I've included a set of core indicators associated with animals here as an example, and the framework for our sector focuses on antibiotics. The framework will be dynamic and will be refined periodically as it's being implemented, and targets are yet to be set. So for the Australian animal health sector, these indicators will be considered for suitability and included in relevant plans to support the monitoring and evaluation of our national AMR strategy. Another driver on the international stage is the European Union's action to advance the international fight and cooperation against AMR by regulating the livestock animals and their products between its own member states and those countries exporting them to the EU through two pieces of legislation. So this legislation on veterinary medicines and medicated feed was adopted by the European Parliament last year and will come into force in January 2022. The two restrictions that apply to countries exporting animals or animal products to the EU, the first is that antimicrobial growth promoters cannot be used in animals or their products. In this regard, Australia does not have antimicrobials important to human health with growth promotion claims. The second is that a group of antimicrobials will be reserved for human use, and Australia has offered assistance in the formation of that list. A scientific workshop is also expected to be convened by the European Medicines Agency with representatives from the tripartite to progress this work. Secondary legislation will be developed to support this approach. At this stage, we don't expect implications to be severe for Australia. You may be aware that the EU and Australia are undertaking a free trade agreement, and the agreement covers AMR, which is a new area for the FTA. Given the confidential discussions are still underway, what I can say is that the EU is focused on cooperation and information sharing towards combating AMR. There are also commercial influences being placed on global animal health sector, and these are coming from international retailers seeking to source animals, for example, raised without the highest priority critically important antimicrobials. So I believe that the Australian animal health sector is well positioned given much of our end product is exported. So if we move to the domestic front, and from a national perspective, the Commonwealth, it will continue to deliver strategies that are consistent with and build upon global initiatives. You would be aware that there was a recent public consultation for the next national AMR strategy and that it's being progressed, as the current strategy will expire at the end of this year. So the next AMR strategy will continue its focus on a One Health approach and include environment alongside human and animal health sectors. It will expand beyond the focus of antibiotics and include antifungals, antiparasitics and antivirals. It will build upon the current strategy with enhanced engagement between the Commonwealth and state and territory governments, the veterinary profession and animal industries. It will provide a 20-year vision supported by shorter-term sector-specific action plans, and will retain the 7 strategic objectives similar to those that you see in the current strategy. It is expected that the next national AMR strategy will be progressed to the Council of Australian Governments following its endorsement through the government's clearance committees through health and agriculture. Once that strategy is finalised, detailed sector-specific plans, action plans will be progressed, and the animal sector is well on its way to addressing that latter requirement. So in November 2018, the Australian Animal Sector National Antimicrobial Resistance Plan was released, and it outlines the animal sector's priority areas for action and next steps in order to contribute towards Australia's AMR strategy. The department and relevant animal health stakeholders have been preparing a sector-specific action plan, and that's to implement actions off the back of the AMR plan. And these collective actions will put our Australian animal health sector in a favourable position to continue its fight against AMR. From a jurisdictional perspective, complementary One Health or animal health AMR strategies or policies are also in development or being finalised, and that in Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia and Western Australia. So I just wanted to briefly reflect at this point about how long animal health has had an antimicrobial stewardship focus, and that's occurred since the 1950s. So in Australia, we are fortunate to not be confronted by the challenges faced by our colleagues in other countries, where greater antimicrobial use and resistance are found in food-producing animals. Our collective animal health initiatives have contributed to our country's safe, clean and green image. So in late 2018, a group of Australian livestock industries published a report on antimicrobial stewardship in Australian livestock industries with the funding from our department. And this report provides an overview of historical and current practices relevant to antimicrobial stewardship from each of the contributing industries. Also in 2018, livestock industry representatives initiated the inaugural Australian Veterinary Antimicrobial Stewardship Conference. It provided an exchange of information covering topics from international AMR trends in animal health, antimicrobial ratings, factors influencing antimicrobial prescribing in food-producing animals, right through to barriers and opportunities to progressing veterinary antimicrobial stewardship, and showcase the good work being done. In mid-2018, the antibacterial importance ratings were released, and this followed a One Health approach. So the ratings were enhanced by the integration of antimicrobial agents used in humans and animals, and looked at the potential for resistance and cross-resistance to develop. So our national list is not only informs the Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority when undertaking antibiotic risk assessments, but it's also an education tool for our veterinary profession. Furthermore, many of our livestock industry organisations have introduced formal antimicrobial stewardship frameworks, and these resources serve as a good model for industries that have less sophistication in their approach to AMS. We've also had an expert panel of veterinarians with the funding from the department develop the Veterinary Antimicrobial Stewardship online training program, and it explores key principles in the development of AMR and the important role veterinarians play as prescribers in reducing selective pressure on microbes. There are 5 online learning modules currently available for self-paced work. This work is being strengthened through the development of additional modules, the promotion of them to graduate veterinarians and other stakeholders, and also the evaluation of the program and its impact. Further achievements have been made through the publication of the National Pig Prescribing Guidelines, and these were developed by the Australian Veterinary Association and funded by the Department and Australian Pork Limited. They are also complemented by other prescribing guidelines individually developed by the University of Melbourne and the AVA for cattle, horses, dogs and cats. The AVA and Animal Medicines Australia have also teamed up to develop further prescribing guidelines for poultry, cattle and sheep, and have also developed responsible use fact sheets. So all of these developments mean that veterinary prescribers have more guidance and support than they did nearly 5 years ago. Additionally, the AVA has fighting AMR as one of its key strategic pillars and to promote AMS initiatives to the veterinary profession. And there are a number of other activities such as good practice AVA and jurisdictional guidelines available to support personal biosecurity, which gives me a segue to my next point. Australia also has a solid development and implementation of biosecurity plans in the animal health sector, and this has been a valuable approach for our country. Some of the examples are shown here on the slide. So biosecurity is a key element to keeping animal disease from entering and establishing on farm, and thus reducing the risk and subsequent need for use of antimicrobials. Practices promoted through these plans include the use of vaccines, managing the movement of people, introduction of new animals into a herd, and improved nutrition. Our livestock producers also participate in various industry and supermarket-related quality assurance programs, which assist them also in reducing disease burden and thereby the requirement for treatments such as antimicrobials. Animal Health Australia is an independent animal health body, and it produces information on farm biosecurity for our livestock producers. In the last 4 years, we've had comprehensive AMR surveillance reports from 3 intensive industries, and these projects took into account OE standards for AMR surveillance in food-producing animals. And for the pig and chicken meat surveys, estimated the prevalence of resistance in food-producing animals for E. coli, Salmonella, Campylobacter, Enterococcus in healthy animals. So there is good evidence from the reports to support Australia's narrative about low risk of AMR in food-producing animals. For example, from the Salmonella results, which were common to all 3 industries, susceptibility was shown to Keftivir, colistin and ceftriaxone. The results for Enterococcus showed a lack of vancomycin resistance, and Salmonella was susceptible to a majority of antimicrobials tested, and no multi-drug resistant bacteria were found from the chicken meat surveillance. There were low levels of AMR in Salmonella from the chicken egg environments, particularly antimicrobials of high ASTAG rating. No colistin, azithromycin, Keftivir and ceftriaxone resistance were found among Salmonella species in pigs. There were also some improvements that were identified from these reports. Overall, there is a good report card for the participating industries in Australia and for Australia's AMR status. Australia's ongoing conservative approach to the use of antibiotics in animal health is supported by these reports, and our industries are wanting to maintain this approach for Australia. Australia's animal health sector has been working continually to maintain and demonstrate the low risk of AMR that was found from previous surveillance. We also recognise that accurate surveillance is dependent on good laboratory capacity and methodology. A new test AMR working group has focused on national standardisation of antimicrobial susceptibility testing in Australian animal health laboratories. That said, the department and other industries have also funded further key surveillance-related projects as shown here. As mentioned earlier, the issue of phasing out antibiotic growth promotants remains a hot topic internationally and nationally. In late 2017, the Australian Chief Veterinary Officer held 2 workshops to consider the opportunity of phasing out the use of antimicrobials important for human health as growth promotants. Australia now does not have no antimicrobial products important for human health with growth promotion claims, and there were very few being used beforehand. There are only 3 antibiotics remaining that are not important for human medicine, which are registered with growth promotion claims. So this is a significant achievement obtained through the acceptance of collective action. With the Animal Antibiotic Awareness Week, the department actively participates on global Twitter chat on AMR and encouraging AMS, and that links to the OIE and the WHO events. There's also been work undertaken by Australian state and territory governments representatives to develop a proposal for a harmonised system that will allow veterinarians to exercise professional judgment where appropriate to treat animals in their care. Antimicrobial stewardship has been incorporated into this proposal. So taking stock of what we have achieved so far for animal health and where do we need to go next? Australia's future approach to tackling AMR is aiming for an integrated animal health, human health, One Health approach. So in order to support that integrated One Health system in Australia, we need greater national coordination in AMR surveillance and in particular AMU monitoring for animal health, including companion animals. Surveillance in the animal health sector is still an ad hoc model, but we're progressing it towards an ongoing one. We also need harmonisation of laboratory standards in antimicrobial susceptibility testing and finding options to address the cost barrier associated with culture and sensitivity testing. So animal health does not have a Medicare system. We also need increased key data sources, including laboratory diagnostic submission pathways for AMR isolates, further information on drug supply, deeper information on drug use by obtaining data at the farm level through avenues such as a national prescribing survey. The key limitation for an integrated system is adequate human and financial resourcing, and funding is not yet equivalent to that seen in human health. We need to be able to create a much more accurate picture to support our prescribers, our industries, and the global progress on AMR. So in conclusion, with the imminent finalisation of the next national AMR strategy, and given the complexity of AMR, national One Health partnerships, coordination and collaboration amongst human, animal and environment sectors and at regional and international levels continue to be pivotal. This is also highly important for jurisdictions as they develop their AMR strategies and policies. Everyone is part of the solution in combating AMR. In animal health, we need to maintain our focus on developing more coordinated AMR surveillance and harmonised laboratory methodology interpretation. We also need to look more deeply at formalised AMU data collection and a national prescribing survey of veterinarians. This work collectively would not have been done. We need to actually be able to further build on the Australian animal health narrative and how different our situation is here to that overseas. But we also needed to do this to primarily provide timely feedback to our producers and prescribers to help them improve their work. However, there is still a need for greater investment in animal health, similar to that experienced in human health. And this imbalance is frequently found in other countries too. To make a deeper impact on AMR and given the lack of investment, animal health will continue to leverage AMR, existing animal health work with priority AMR activities. There is a low risk of AMR in food producing animals in Australia than that's seen overseas, and we need to keep it that way. Lastly, the good story that we have with Australian animal health would not have been achieved without our committed animal health stakeholders, and we're grateful for their efforts. This commitment has brought us to this point, but we recognise there's a lot more to do in animal health. Thank you.